a small wooden house. A cool, gentle morning. Dad carries the wood out and places it on the ground. Mom lays out the measuring tape, carefully measuring each piece. Sister uses a pencil to mark the lines. Little brother hugs a handful of nails, running back and forth excitedly. Dad joins two wooden boards to make the frame. The little house tilts slightly. The family stands back to look. Mom points and gently shakes her head. They take it apart and adjust it. Dad hammers in the nails. Thud, thud. Sister holds the board straight. Little brother hands over the hammer. The wrong way. The small wooden house stands firmly. The roof provides just enough cover with a cute low door. The whole family fits perfectly inside the tiny house. They look at one another and smile warmly. Bingo has a stomachache.
Donut mission. This is the last donut, and here are two experts at handling sweets, Bluey and Bingo. Approaching the target, stealthily, the agents are calculating their trajectory. But wait, Chief Rhino is patrolling the living room area. We've been found. Find a place to hide. Officer Rhino is a seasoned investigator. Nothing escapes his notice. The suspect is on the run. The chase begins. The speed is dizzying. Bluey and Bingo are running at a considerable pace, but the police officer is not lagging behind. It's a dead end. Bluey and Bingo have been cornered. It's time to hand over the evidence. The law always prevails. Oh, his stomach is rumbling louder than a police siren. It seems the policeman is starving too. A sweet truce was established. The case is closed. Everyone is happy and everyone is full.
The simple fishing rod. Quiet. Lakeside/riverside. Dad arrives with a fancy fishing rod, tackle box, and folding chair. Son stands beside him, empty-handed, watching curiously. Dad casts the line confidently. The float sits on the water, perfectly still. Dad waits, checks his watch, sighs softly. The son looks around, finds a tree branch, ties a simple string to it, adds a tiny hook, drops it into the water, just for fun. Dad doesn't notice. The string suddenly tugs hard. The son's eyes widen. He pulls up the branch. A fish! The son freezes for a moment, then grins proudly. Dad turns around, looks at the fish, looks at his expensive fishing rod, looks at the stick. Dad bursts out laughing, shaking his head in disbelief. Dad pats the son's head proudly. They sit side by side, watching the water together. The fish swims calmly in a small bucket. Fixing the outdoor table. A quiet morning. The wooden outdoor table wobbles slightly. Every gentle touch makes the tabletop tremble. The family stands around, looking at one another. Dad nods. Let's fix it. Dad kneels down and tightens the bolts with a wrench. Clack! Clack! A soft metallic sound. Mom hands over a small wooden piece, placing it under the shorter table leg. Sister wipes the tabletop with a cloth. Dust sparkles in the sunlight. Little brother holds the table leg, tilting his head, watching very seriously. Dad places a cup of water in the middle of the table. Everyone holds their breath. The cup stays still. No shaking, no spilling. The family laughs happily. The little brother claps with a loud smack. Saving a broken plant. A calm afternoon after the rain. The little brother runs around the garden, then suddenly stops. He points. A young plant has been bent and broken by the wind, its stem leaning close to the ground. The little brother bends down to look, his face turning sad. The sister steps closer, gently touches the stem, and shakes her head worriedly. Dad examines the break carefully and nods with a decision. Dad gently straightens the plant's stem. Mom holds the base, adds more soil, pressing it firmly around the roots. The sister places 2 wooden stakes on either side. The little brother passes the string, carefully tying it around the stem. The string is tightened just enough, not too tight. A light breeze. A gentle wind blows. The plant stands firm. Its leaves tremble softly, no longer leaning. The family applauds as if they've just saved someone. Lost together, found together. Trick backfires. Mom is cleaning the floor, fully focused. Bluey and Bingo peek from behind the couch, exchanging mischievous grins. Bluey draws a simple trap plan on a piece of paper. Bingo nods excitedly and gives a silent thumbs up. They shake hands in agreement. Fast, funny montage. A string is tied to a chair. A pillow is placed up high. A small paper X is stuck on a slippery spot. The girls step back, admiring their work. Mom walks closer. The girls hold their breath, covering their mouths. Mom pauses, looks around suspiciously. Mom pretends not to notice and calmly walks around the trap. Suddenly, she gently pulls the string. The pillow drops right onto Bluey and Bingo. The girls tumble to the floor, surprised but unharmed. Mom stands with hands on her hips, smiling victoriously. Bluey and Bingo look at each other, embarrassed, then hide their faces. Mom pulls both girls into a warm hug. They all laugh together. Dad peeks in, accidentally steps on the leftover trap and slips slightly. Everyone bursts into laughter, covering the roof to avoid the rain afternoon. Mom looks up at the sky, raises her hand to feel the wind. A raindrop lands on her hand. Mom turns toward the yard, signaling urgently. Dad runs to the shed, pulling out a large tarp. The wind grows stronger. Leaves rustle loudly. Dad spreads the tarp over the items in the yard. Flap! A strong gust lifts the tarp up. Dad holds one corner of the tarp. Mom grips the other corner. Sister jumps onto a chair, pulling the tarp edge down. Little brother presses hard on the lowest corner. The tarp billows like a sail. Everyone sways, but keeps holding on. Rain starts pouring down. Water slides off the tarp, streaming down in lines. Items are dry. Plant pots are safe. Chairs are fully covered. Everyone sighs in relief. The balancing act. Bluey spots a bird perched on the fence and decides to challenge herself with a little balancing game. She slowly lifts one leg, arms out wide, trying to keep her body as still as a statue. But balancing is harder than it looks. Bluey begins to wobble and her little legs start to shake. Dad Bandit notices and steps right beside her. He circles his hands around her, creating a silent safety zone. Seeing her dad's hands nearby, Bluey feels a surge of confidence. She takes a deep breath and regains her focus. Thanks to the silent support, Bluey holds her balance longer than before. She feels strong and very capable. The memory box. A quiet afternoon. A small box sits in the center of the table. A handwritten label on the outside reads, Memories. Dad looks around and gently opens a drawer. He takes out an old key worn by time. Smiling softly, he places it into the box. Mom stands by the shelf. She takes a neatly folded old photograph, gently smooths the corner, then places it into the box. Sister runs back to her room. She brings out a slightly worn hair ribbon. She looks at it for a moment longer, then puts it in. Little brother quietly bends down to the floor. He picks up a small scratched toy, nods to himself, and places it into the box. The whole family sits in a circle. The box is placed in the middle. Dad opens the lid. The first item is taken out. Everyone looks at each other, pointing, guessing. As each item appears, surprise gestures, soft nods, gentle laughter. As the items are laid back on the table, the family sits closer together. Bluey and Bingo embark on a new treasure hunt. According to the map, the treasure is right here. But the treasure hasn't appeared yet. The whole family starts to doubt the map. Bingo discovers a very small detail. The treasure was never buried in the ground. The treasure was hidden right in front of them. Sometimes, treasure is closer than we think.
Shooting star. The night has fallen. Bluey and Bandit settle down for a quiet evening on the veranda after a long day of play. Bluey gazes up at the twinkling stars, and suddenly, she points an excited finger towards the sky. A brilliant, swift streak of light, a shooting star, flies across the dark night sky. Both dad and daughter watch it pass. Bluey turns to look at her dad, her eyes wide with surprise. and a little bit of wonder. Bandit gently pulls Bluey into a warm hug. Bluey closes her eyes, keeping her silent wish completely private. She opens them, giving a look of pure contentment. Bandit tightens his hug, savoring the special moment.
Night camping. Late afternoon, still bright daylight. The family loads camping gear into the car. Tent, bags, flashlight. The kids bounce excitedly. Dad gives a confident thumbs up.
Let's go!
Mom smiles. Dad and Mom set up the tent. The kids help hold poles and pegs. The tent is finally finished. The sky turns dark. The forest becomes quiet. Leaves rustle in the wind. The kids press close to Mom and Dad. Dad swallows nervously. Mom looks around, uneasy. A small noise from the bushes. Everyone freezes. Dad switches on the flashlight. Its beam shakes. Just a bug. No danger. But nobody relaxes. The family looks at each other. Mom gently shakes her head. Dad nods very quickly. The kids immediately run back toward the car. The tent stands alone behind them. The fish tank mistake. A fish tank sits neatly on a table. The fish swim happily. Dad sprinkles fish food carefully, nodding with satisfaction. Dad feeds the fish. Fish swim up excitedly. The kids press their faces to the glass, pointing. One day, Dad is busy. Mom picks up a white container that looks like fish food. Mom pours it into the tank. The water turns cloudy. Mom looks at the container again. Salt. Mom's eyes widen. The whole family springs into action. Dad gently moves the fish into a temporary bowl. Mom drains the tank. The kids carry buckets of water very seriously. Music speeds up slightly. Fresh water is poured in. The filter turns on. The fish are carefully returned to the tank. Everyone leans in, holding their breath. The fish start swimming again, happy and lively. The kids jump with joy. Dad exhales in relief. Mom smiles awkwardly and pats her chest. Bingo has a stomach ache.
Two hours later. Lost together, found together.
covering the roof to avoid the rain afternoon. Mom looks up at the sky, raises her hand to feel the wind. A raindrop lands on her hand. Mom turns toward the yard, signaling urgently. Dad runs to the shed, pulling out a large tarp. The wind grows stronger. Leaves rustle loudly. Dad spreads the tarp over the items in the yard. Flap! A strong gust lifts the tarp up. Dad holds one corner of the tarp. Mom grips the other corner. Sister jumps onto a chair, pulling the tarp edge down. Little brother presses hard on the lowest corner. The tarp billows like a sail. Everyone sways, but keeps holding on. Rain starts pouring down. Water slides off the tarp, streaming down in lines. Items are dry. Plant pots are safe. Chairs are fully covered. Everyone sighs in relief.